Good afternoon. Thank you, Congressman Scott, for inviting me to be here to share about what we have done in Clayton County. Let me begin by saying that given this report, Misplaced Priorities, Over Incarcerate, Undereducate, it's also important to note that in addition to these very strong and good recommendations, I strongly support, and something that we should be, or should have been working on years ago, but within the juvenile justice system, though, we need to consider recommendations. Because what's going on right now is that if you take a look at the phrase over incarcerate, undereducate, we are incarcerating too many kids in schools. And as a result, they're not graduating. And so we have to take a look at the front end. And I think, Congressman Scott, that's one of the reasons you have me here. And so when I became a judge in '99, I've been on the bench come July 1st, it will be 12 years. One of the things that bothered me was the number of kids that I would see in court every day. I'd have as many as 18 hearings alone just on kids being detained. Now, my population in Clayton County is about 280,000. If you've flown into Atlanta, you're in my county, okay? We're the third smallest county, fifth largest by population. Nonetheless, most of those before me were young people that were there on misdemeanor school-related offenses, or they were there for probation violations, for technical violations, things like not doing an essay, okay? It's ridiculous. It was stupid. And many of them were kids of color, okay? And I said, that's it. We need to do something about this. And so I started looking out and about, and I came across the Andy Casey Foundation. And I reached out to the Andy Casey Foundation, particularly Bart Lubau, the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. And I said, Bart, let me in. I'm not asking for your money. I just want what you know. And so he let me in, and using their model, reading their pathways, it inspired me then to take a look at our system, the way we did things. And this is what we did. We took evidence-based practices, okay? We took a look at what works. And I remember when I testified before your committee last year, Congressman, you asked me a question. You said, now, where can we go? How come there's a lot of folks out there not using these evidence-based practices? How do we get it to you? Remember my answer was, Congressman? I said, Google it. But, you know, that's an indictment of our system. You know, here we are in this internet age, and all this stuff I'm talking about in terms of what works to reduce recidivism among young people, even adults, we can Google it. It's called What Works. Plug in What Works Community Correction. You will get a plethora of things. You'll get Professor Ed Latessa from the University of Cincinnati, one of the leading researchers, okay? And I can keep going with the list, but there's six causes of criminal behavior. Delinquent producing needs, we call them criminogenic. I'm not going to go over them with you right now. Don't have the time. But I'll tell you this, there's 6 of them. There's no other reason why kids and adults commit crimes, okay? But we now know that kids who are high risk are going to have 2 or more of these criminogenic factors. And then we've learned from 40+ years of this research that now we have a list of what works and what does not work to help kids and to help adults, to meet those criminogenic needs that they possess, whether it be cognitive thinking, whether it be their peers, whether it's a weak or poor problem-solving skills, family function, school connectedness. School connectedness is the strongest buffer against delinquency. The first one is the family. The second one is school connectedness. Undereducate. Now, having said this, that's when I said, okay, I need to pull everyone together. And that's why we have the National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges attending here today. Thank you for being here, Sherry and Wendy, okay? And I want you to know that our judges, the National Council Executive Board, voted last year to support the removal of the valid court order exception, okay? in terms of the reauthorization going forward. And it's going to come down to judicial leadership. Because in all these communities, you know, the one person that can call people together is the judge. And you have some articles here, and in one of these articles is published a statement. Judge Huff from Jefferson County, Alabama, he and I have been going around proselytizing about this stuff. And we say that if the juvenile court is the intersection of juvenile justice, then the judge is the traffic cop. I mean, because it's the judge, we're sitting up on the bench, and what do we see? When we see a kid, how many times that we as judges see a kid, and we also see along with that kid the Department of Juvenile Justice, child welfare, mental health, because these kids don't have one simple issue. They tend to have multiple issues. But we have all these entities here, but what are they doing? They're turf guarding. Well, it's not my kid, that's your kid. No, that's your kid. And it's going to take that one person who can write an order and say, no, it's our kid. And it's going to take that judicial leadership just simply to call your local community stakeholders together to say, we need to deal with this problem. We need to come up with evidence-based practices. We need to pool our resources. We need to leverage each other's resources in our local communities so that we can build these evidence-based practices, multi-systemic therapy, family function, wraparound services of different kinds, okay? Cognitive restructuring. These are things we now know, and it's on the what works list that is effective in reducing recidivism among high-risk offenders. You know, going back to the detention hearings and seeing about 18, you know, when I came in, I'll put it to you this way. We have a 60-bed facility. There were over 100 kids in that facility sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Today, our daily average population is what, about 24.1, calling my chief of staff, okay? 24.1 is our daily population. Over 100 down to 24.1, okay? And why? Because we had to implement these evidence-based practices. We instituted a detention review committee before the hearings in the morning. It's a multidisciplinary committee. Now we have our Department of Family and Children's Services, our mental health, our school system, other providers meeting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning before the hearings, talking about these kids and assessing them and coming up with what works to get them out of jail or to keep them from going into jail. And as a result, it comes down. I'm going to say this one thing. Then that inspired me, and I don't want to steal Matt's thunder here because he's doing the school to prison pipeline, okay? But the other thing is that the number of all the delinquent filings coming in, all right, 1/3 of them was from the school system. Now, you've heard of zero tolerance. It's zero intelligence. All right? Do you know that African-American youth are 6 times more likely, Latinos 3 times more likely, to be suspended out of school or referred to juvenile court on the first offense of the same type of offense than their white counterpart student? Now, there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. And it's a systemic problem. We have to fix this system. And so what we did in Clayton County is the same thing, using the same approach. And that is, let's the judge, hey, come on, let's all come together. Let's talk about this. We need to reduce these school referrals. Because when we took the 1/3 cases, we broke them down on our data, most of them were school fights, disorderly conduct. You know, kids, okay? You know, kids who make you mad. I mean, come on. All right? My job as a judge is to differentiate the kids that make you mad versus the ones that scare you. Okay? I mean, give me the ones that scare you. The ones that, if they don't get the type of help they need, they're going to break into your car, they're going to break into your house, okay? But the kids who just make you mad, come on, folks. You can figure this out. And so what happened is that school resource officers get into the schools. And what do the school systems do? Oh, I have another tool. I have somebody else who now can help me discipline these kids. Hey, officer, I want Johnny out of my school now. And then we begin to find out that some of these kids, and then many of these kids are kids who are EDD and learning disabilities, okay? You know, they're acting out. It's a manifestation of their disability. But you know what? We don't have time to go through the due process here, all right? Johnny is making me mad. And so they'll go to the police officer to have the kid arrested because now he's acted out in such a way. And now we have a lot of kids with disabilities. Here's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. We know from the research that if you arrest a kid on school campus, they are twice as likely not to graduate. Are you hearing what I'm saying? They are twice as likely not to graduate. Then you make them appear in court, they are 4 times likely not to graduate. We know from the research that if you over-suspend kids in elementary and middle school, they are likely, they are 6 times more likely, 4 to 6 times more likely not to graduate if you over-suspend them. Now, you think about it for a moment. I mean, you would think that we as professionals who work with kids, educators or whoever, would know, okay, that, gee, if you don't keep kids in school, they're not going to graduate. Okay? Who would ever think that keeping kids in school, okay, will increase graduation? Who would ever think that? Okay? Now, having said that, back in 2003, I brought everyone together. I said, now, it took us 9 months to work it out, and we beat each other's heads together. I mean, there was some strong conversation, okay? But finally, the thing is judicial leadership. I didn't get in there and tell them what to do. I just told them how to do it. I said, this is the process. The objective is we are going to reduce school referrals. And we're going to keep meeting until we get it done. Took them 9 months. We did it. And that school protocol has been in effect ever since. And we have now reduced school referrals 73% in our county. 73%. Do you know what else has happened since then? Our graduation rates, which, by the way, hit an all-time low of 58% in 2003, have increased 21%. We have put in other systems to help reduce out-of-school suspension. The school system is now reaching out and saying, we need some assistance. We want assistance, and coming up with alternatives to suspension. We now have alternatives to detention. We also are now developing in Clayton County alternatives to suspension to continue increasing, sustaining and increasing those graduation rates. We now have that many more youth of color graduating today than we did back in 2003. Okay? You know. So, having said that, our crime rate has gone down among juveniles in various areas because you know what? So goes graduation rates, so goes the crime. Okay? Our recidivist rates among our probationers, which used to be at 51%, okay, fluctuates between 17 and 21%. Okay? Because we're now targeting the high-risk offenders. Because our caseloads, which used to be 150, are now at 20. But those 20 are the ones that are high risk. But we couldn't give them the services in the old days because we had 150 kids to chase around, which most of them were low-risk offenders. Gee! It's just being smarter about the way we do things. And that's what this is about. We need to be smart about how we spend our money. And we're not spending our money smart on building prisons. Okay? And we're not smart when we build more jail facilities for kids either. There is a better way. And it does work. One last comment as I shut my book here. Speaking of school safety, in Georgia there's a zero-tolerance law that this protocol doesn't affect. It cannot change. Because it's the law. If you are caught on campus with a certain type of weapon, you have to be referred to juvenile court. So if that's true, then why is it, how do you explain since 2003 the number of weapons on campus of those type have fallen 70%? I'm going to tell you why. This is what the school police are telling me, have been telling me. And now they travel with me to train other sites across the country. Matt knows what I'm talking about. My police officers come with me to tell other police officers because the kids talk to us. They didn't talk to us back then. If you want to know what's going on in your community, talk to the kids. The schools are a microcosm of the community, but you got to get them to talk to you. And they weren't talking to you, to the police back then, because they were the bad guys. They were locking everyone up for every little thing. Now the police are on campus all the time, engaging the kids, and the kids are telling them what's going on. Do you know in the last 2 years, the officer of the year in Clayton County was a school resource officer? Chief of police, and given the award, said the reason why is because our school resource officers solved more crimes, including murder, in Clayton County than any other division of the police department. Why? Because the chief of police says it's because of this protocol. It changed the way we think. That's what we need to do in this country. We need to change the way we think. Our kids are going to suffer. And you're not going to like where we're going to end up. It's only going to get worse.